All right. Hi, everybody, and good evening. Here from Finland. Uh, this is our, let's see, what is this here? This is our is that our 108th or, yeah, 109th program here, and we're into reading number 45 in Glamour, A World Problem, a wonderful book, which will help us deal, I think, with our issues, because who among us can say that we are glamour free, the the glamour of having no glamours. We've been in a very powerful period where the Aries ingress has just occurred, the sun entering Aries, and then less than 4 hours later, the Aries full moon. You won't usually get them that close, and it's the last super moon for a while in terms of the closeness to the Earth. And for all of us, I hope it means that we can use the will to make a new beginning. We have 6 years ahead of us before the great conclave. They're going to be momentous years, and we have to find a way to work esoterically, interiorly, in such a way that we can really be of use, because you can be sure that the counterforce will do everything it can to promote the tendency towards selfishness. As a matter of fact, these glamours sort of revolve around each other. I always have to think about what glamour we can deal with, but, sometimes there's repetition, and it's all based on mistaken identity and on the sense of dualism, duality. We'll work with selfishness today because that abounds everywhere, self-interest, we might say, rather than interest in the larger picture, everywhere abounding. And something that the main thing we can do there is eliminate it in our own lives. Just going to make a little note there, because then we will be fit to help others deal with that same issue, which is, it's very stubborn. It's very stubborn, and it all has to do with mistaken identity. Sometimes you say what you see is what you get, but it's not really that way, because I came up with a little saying long ago: if you can see it, you cannot be it. Well, of course, everything you see, you are anyway. But on a lesser turn of the spiral, looking at the object is not the same as sensing. Well, that's not a good word either. Registering that all-pervading something that dwells within us and within every human being, with every being, and with every little atom and subatomic particle, that is pure being itself. So pure being is what we have to register, and our normal sense of selfishness, it is really a very crude thing that comes from taking the perception for the reality. That has to be eliminated. So mistaken identity, selfishness, those lie at the root of all the attempts to preserve the identity that we think we are mistakenly. We do everything we can, we develop untouchable egotistical attitudes, we lie, we manipulate, we do all those things just to preserve the mistaken identity that we have fixed upon. So we have to break our sense of that false identity, and in doing that, we will not only overcome glamour, but the greater illusion in which this is taking place. So I just want to, just welcome you here. Glad you're here. Alexandra, Anne-Marie, Annette, Barbara, Carl, Catherine, Chris, Deborah, George, Gretchen. Well, that's another one of myself. Jan, John Pluta, Joke, Karen, Gritska and Karen Johansson, both. Catherine Swenson and Catherine O'Brien, Margot, Mariana, Mariut, Martha, Martha Gallahue and Martha Mickelson, Natney and Nienke, Risto, Sandra, Suzanne, Tia, Tu, Yvonne, Zenaidi, and Anne Veronica. And over here on our right, we have Joe and Tuya helping us with various other things. So welcome to all of you. One more has joined us. I won't always be able to say hi because, people are joining a little late, and then I can't really pick it up on the list, But anyway, welcome to everybody, and let's just have a little bit of silence as we, wherever we may be, or wherever our little, the precipitation of the emanation which we are, wherever that happens to be, locationally in time and space, we all try to sense the unity. I think the important thing is that we sense that we are all in a relationship with each other, and that the outer apparatus and the location in time and space are not consequential in terms of this inner fusion in consciousness, which unites us into one serving group. We have the technique, and we know something of what we're doing, not as much as we will know in the future, but we know something. And we can help eliminate some of these problems more at the causal level than simply working at the level of effects. Well, okay, we have a little bit to finish up here. He's talking about use the information given in the treatise on the seven rays as your guide in self-analysis. We all have to deal with the microcosm, which is our temporary little self, and we have to be as accurate as we possibly can, maybe not as accurate as we would be if the Tibetan, with all of his discernment, were informing us about the predominating energy of our vehicles, but he had everybody in his groups make at least an assessment before he told them anything. And he told them about their soul and personality rays long before he said anything about their mind, emotional, and physical, etheric physical nature. So he left quite a bit up to them so that they could learn through their analysis of their behavior in the world and their thought process and their reactions, So we do have to keep one analytical eye upon the little self, as if it were an instrument, but not be obsessed with that little self in terms of our objectives. It is instrumental. That's the idea. It's instrumental. And it is not for the purpose of elevation above all other things. And unless we have an instrumental attitude towards our equipment, then we are captured by the elemental life of that equipment, and we don't reach the objective. Now let's see here. I think I did a little bit of this. But anyway, I'll just review a bit. So, the usual rays of the mental body, 1, 4, and 5. Now, we have an old saying when we do the 7-ray seminars, when you hear hoofbeats, you might first think of horses rather than wildebeests, so most of us fulfill the ordinary expectation, and if you go through DK's assignment of rays, you'll see that for the most part, except for an occasional ray 2 mind, maybe there were a couple of them, maybe 3, or a ray 3 mind, I think there were a couple of them. I think those were the only exceptions. It would be possible to have the ray 7 mind at the time of the first initiation. None of them had the ray 6 mind, so it was pretty much 1, 4, and 5, except for a few exceptions. When it came to the astral body, the customary rays were 2 and 6, and the objective was 2, but quite a few of the people who had to really learn to control the astral body had that ray 1 astral body. Although in his examples, he even went so far as to demonstrate a ray 5 astral body and a ray 7 astral body. None of those ever showed up in his students. So they were all 2 and 6s, except for a few that had the ray 1 astral body, which is eliminative, and which eventually casts out of emotional reaction what he calls the storms and tempers. There's also a danger, of course, of astral suppression. Maybe it's needed for a little while because of too vigorous an expression before that time, but always ray 1 astral body was on its way to becoming either a 6 or a 2 astral body. When it comes to the rays governing the physical body, almost everything was ray 3 and 6. There was one person with a ray 2 astral body, physical body, etheric physical, sorry. And no picture of her has yet surfaced, but maybe something will. No ray 4 astral bodies in this group, nor ray 5, though he did warn a man who had a very powerful concrete tendency that if he didn't straighten it out in his next life, he could end up with a ray 5 brain, which is the same thing as a ray 5 etheric physical, and that would be a danger to someone on the path of occultism. There were maybe a couple of ray 6 astral bodies. He didn't describe them too much. I imagine they would be either of the Martian or Neptunian type, and then on to ray 7. So pretty much what you see here is what is the equipment that we have. We can have all kinds of ideas of what may be our sub-rays here. I just want to say that we've gone through a lot of labor and are continuing to labor before the conference for the preparation of the new PIP 3. We hope you will both be at the conference and will be in a position to take the PIP 3 on your computer, and it will help launch those of us who may need it into a clearer idea of what our rays may be. There's also a greater test called the TERRA, Transpersonal Astro-Rayological Analysis, which I created long ago, and which has, it's a real process that you would go through for 3 or 4 weeks, and it's got 888 questions, but by the time you're finished with it, some of your higher rays may the tendencies of them may begin to appear. Right now we're dealing with personality and soul, but DK gives us the important hints about our triadal rays and our monadic rays, the lesser and the greater. So there's a lot of the stratospheric ray analysis that has to go on here as well. But until we've really built the Antakarana so that it's really functional, we may be conditioned by those higher rays, but we're not going to be very aware of it. And gradually we do become aware of the rays coming from the more impersonal spaces in our higher constitution. So that gives you an idea, and I think, for all of us, as much as possible, and before the Great Conclave, we should become as certain about our ray hypothesis as we can be. Now, this is not an easy thing, and I personally, over many, many years, and analyzing my own condition, have changed my assessment a number of times. And so it will be probably for you too, but eventually one settles into what looks like a likely hypothesis and begins to fine-tune the balance and the interaction between these rays so that the purpose of ourselves as a soul in any one incarnation begins to really work through using the rays rather than being blocked by the lower rays. Okay, maybe that's enough on that. Thus, he says, you will note that all the rays play their part in the mechanism of man. As you can see, 1 through 7 are all here. And they are there in our system also in different ways as well. They play their part in the mechanism of man, making all circumstances the vehicles of opportunity and all conditions, the medium of development. So whatever we are presented with, how it is wanting to run away from opportunity because it looks too difficult and it's not very pleasant. We have to use everything that comes our way to build up the type of response apparatus that is capable of helping the divine plan in whatever circumstances we may find ourselves. Now, that is a real moving beyond like and dislike, and it's one of those major requirements before we can participate in what is called Rule 11, which is one day ahead of us, the fourth initiation actually of the group. We're a long way from that, but okay, I think sometimes we'd be lucky as a group to really take the first initiation, and that time is coming. So this statement as to the governing rays is a statement of an infallible rule, except in the case of accepted disciples. Now, well, this is pretty interesting. We have to go back through the rays as assigned in DINA 1, because none of those people knew necessarily, at least it wasn't announced, that they were accepted disciples until DINA 2 began. And then the new reorganized seed group, the group of 24, was created. Now, every one of those 24 was then an accepted disciple. I'm thinking about people, with a Ray 1 astral body, or a Ray 6 physical body. Anyway, he says, if your rays are different than the ones given above, infallibly, he says, that you are an accepted disciple. So we have to consider that too when we consider what our rays are. Do we know we stand with a group on the periphery of Master D.K.'s ashram? Do we know that? Has some dream experience or experience in meditation, has some use of the thought form of the master Has some interview in the Master's ashram, something of that nature, has it revealed to us that we know we are accepted disciples, which means we have a direct connection with the Master rather than like a chela in the light where you have a connection with a higher disciple who is supervising you from above, as it were, and reporting to the Master. In this case, as an accepted disciple, you would have a direct connection with the Master. And then other rays could come into play. Otherwise, it's safest invariably, infallibly, to stick with the rays that are given. Okay, now, it's really interesting because the first group of disciples, maybe they were meant to be, let's see, 3 times 9, 27, 27 plus, and maybe 27 times, okay, 9 times 9 is 81, all right, and then out of those 81 disciples, if everything had been filled out, a final group of 27 would have been chosen. But he never got that far because the war intervened and first things have to come first. And maybe in his next appearance on the physical plane, he will resume that seed group work, which is valid until at least the year 2200. So think about that. We're right in the middle of this whole seed group work where he's trying to bring forward those 10 seed groups. It was an interrupted process due to the danger in which humanity found itself. I'll tell you what, I'm reading a lot through externalization of the hierarchy and making videos for you and for me, and I'm learning a lot about what a tremendous danger it was for for humanity during those years of the second phase of the Great War. Matter of fact, he's calling the Second World War by an interesting name, and the Agni Yoga people do it too. He's calling it Armageddon. So we hear about the great battle in the Bible of Armageddon, and he actually uses that term, Armageddon, in relation to the second phase of the Great War, namely World War II. Let's see if it really is the case or whether there's a continuation of the Armageddon. As you read, excuse me, and study, you would find it of value to reflect upon and then answer the following questions. Okay, so this is just something we can give a moment of silence to, but then carry it on a bit later, each in our own way. Number 1, what is the relation of the intuition to the problem of illusion? You just think about that for a moment and see what thoughts come to you. It's a profound question. Of course, you really want to think about it. And I would just suggest that the mind can be the slayer of the real, and many fragmentary thought forms can be found in the way of the truth. And when the intuition works, there's an immediate impact of the nature of true relationship. In other words, the truth is seen, straight knowledge is seen, and the fragmentation of all the parts and pieces that you don't know what to do with is overcome. Everything is locked into step, and a great unity of all factors verging on oneness dawns upon the consciousness. Just some thoughts. But, if we want to pretend that we are DK's students, we will take some time to answer these things. So, if there's anything when we have our little discussion, anything along this line that you want to ask or think about, or anything you think you are in process of discovering, then, that would be a time to do it. Number 2, in what manner can illumination dispel glamour, and how can it be brought about? Okay, another great question. And of course, we're always working with the technique of light in this particular group, which is the glamour dispelling technique. And basically, we find that glamours are hiding the light, distorting the light. We have a false light, it's called. There's a German word, Irrlicht. It means it's a false light, the light of error. And if you follow it, it's like swamp light. It leads you into the swamp and you just can't get out, and that of course, you're reminded of the swamps of Lerna where the Hydra is dwelling. And maybe let's just say that the middle three heads of the Hydra, having to do most with glamour, are the most effective in stopping human progress at this time. Fear, hate, and ambition. Those are the three there. And the Hydra, it lives in that swamp, and there's no true light in that swamp. And that's what we're trying to do, is to bring it in, Notice how some of the people lately have, political types have been talking about the swamp that is Washington, D.C. And, obviously there's lots of glamour going on there, but hardly anybody's qualified to talk about cleaning out the swamp because they're all part of the problem, So first of all, we have to make sure that our own life is, that sort of blend of earth and water and quicksand and all that our own life is free of the kind of thing that will completely neutralize us and make us sink down and be bogged down. But the light will show us where we're going. I remember a story that, in the old days, ceremonies were taken quite seriously. And in ancient Egypt, you had to really develop some occult powers before you could go through the disciplines of the initiation ceremony. So in those days, there was a lot of dramatization coming over from Atlantis, and the candidates were considered, not just to be sort of speculative, but to really have these powers. And they were turned loose in the darkness in a chamber full of water and crocodiles. Now, if they didn't have the inner light and could not project the beam and therefore see in the dark, as it were, they would not survive the situation. But then if they had the inner light, they would know where to go. So just think about all those crocodiles out there on the astral plane, and we have to be able to detect them, and later we have to be able to destroy them through the ability of this beam, which eventually becomes the horn of the unicorn, which is a method of revelation, but also a method of destruction of the enemy. Okay, and then the third one, define Maya and give your understanding of inspiration as a factor in dispelling it. Now, these are big questions, Let's just pause for a little bit. Define Maya and give your understanding of inspiration as a factor in dispelling it. Well, obviously we will, get better at this, but let's just say there are 3 or 4 veils on the etheric plane, and the very first is the veil of impulsion. And it means there's just all of these unregulated, chaotic energies driving the human being up and down the land until finally he's able to stand steady and control the energies. So Maya is a chaotic situation in terms of the driving energies which affect behavior on the outer plane. Now, inspiration is a rhythmic breathing of divinity. It's really like following the fourfold meditative breath. You breathe in the higher energies and you release them, and there are these moments of contemplation and moments of impression, but it's rhythmic. And it's the way divinity works, in cycles and in pulses that are regulated. So, it's a bit like the 7th ray in that respect. I'm not saying it's necessarily better to have a 7th ray vehicle, outer vehicle, than a 3rd ray. It depends on what you have to do, of course. But in the case of regulating Maya and all of that chaos, the 7th ray rhythmic breathing is very important, and learning the cycles that will prevent us from succumbing to the chaos. Well, DK will have other ways of describing it, but that's just a thought for you and for me. The rhythmic and ordered life, which in these times, especially in the West, is so hard to manage. There's just a chaos of myopic energies everywhere at the moment, and we have to find our own way of restoring our own energy system to a kind of divine order, instead of just being driven up and down the land, as they say, by the factor of chaotic impulse. Okay, so we have to ponder on those things, and we will do so. Actually, we could take, one of them for a whole session, but there we have it. I have purposely not elucidated this technique as I sought to draw out your own ideas. See how this master teacher works, He wants to draw out our own ideas so that when we offer them, we discover where they deviate from what is correct. These are our best ideas, and then he will offer his assessment, and we see the degree of the deviation, if there is any. I would urge you to follow the group meditation with care. Okay. It is of deep importance to the group in the interest of integration and real spiritual cooperation. And, basically he was always giving these integrative meditative techniques. He basically said, look, in DINA 2, I've given you now 6 or 7 meditations, and even though we are disbanding the group, these meditations should hold you for the rest of your life. The full moon work will likewise increase in importance. Later will come facility in recognizing and recording the nature of the glamour to be dissipated, and aptitude in seeing the process of light distribution. So we're just at the beginning here, and obviously to be a real worker on the astral plane, we need something of the light in the head as stimulated by the imagination, and we need to be able to see what we are doing. Any magician, too, the development of certain psychic powers is really helpful, because then we're going to be able to see what we're doing rather than feeling our way. All right, well, I think, there's important things here. I am going to go on a bit, and maybe not as far as I'd like to, but into the causes of glamour. So this is section 2 on the causes of glamour. So this, obviously it's such a world problem that the average person and even the average aspirant disciple doesn't detect it, is not really very astute at identifying the glamours in their own life because they're so used to this way of being. Familiarity contributes to the inability to see the distortion in which we are living. Chaos, Maya, distortion, glamour, separation, illusion, and then follow that by the veil of aspiration, which means, well, to want something high but not to really do anything about it to make it real. Okay, so let's see how far we can go in this a little bit anyway, and the causes of glamour. We shall now employ the word glamour to cover all the aspects of those deceptions. So let's just say, glamour as a big word with many applications. And of course, you can do that, over the centuries. That's the way it's worked out. You can do that when it comes to Maya, and you can do that when it comes to illusion as well. And we're familiar with various books and studies that make the big thing one of those words, the great illusion or the world Maya. And now he's doing that with the word glamour. Okay, so glamour will cover all these things. Now, look at these words: illusions, misunderstandings. I'm sure we have our fair share of those, and misinterpretations, which confront the aspirant at every step of his way until he achieves what? Until he achieves unity. Now, this word unity is being applied here in the emotional realm. Whereas the astral plane is the plane of disunity, the Buddhic power, when rightly applied through the mind, brings about unification. That may still not be quite oneness. Unity is on its way to oneness, which I think is more of a state appreciated monadically. I think monadic awareness is inseparable from the conviction of oneness. Okay, so all these mistakes, if you will, they're going to confront us every step of the way until we really achieve the unity. And, it gets so that you just have to have it, at a certain point, because the discontinuity of things, the fragmentation of things, the distortion of things, they become so worrisome, so annoying. You just have to break through it and achieve this unity. I would have you note that the word unity, for it holds the secret of disillusionment, as this process of release from glamour has been occultly called. Well, I'm not sure I can make a sentence out of that, and I'm not going to go looking. But when I look at disillusionment, I think of the technical meaning of it. To rid oneself of illusions through the dispelling power of the intuition, which unifies all things, With the intuition, you see things exactly as they are in pure reason, as the relationship actually is, and not as you quote unquote think it is, according to your usual illusions, with all their misunderstandings and misinterpretations and wrong emphases. So, anyway, I would have you note that word unity. Okay, now I get it. For it holds the secret of disillusionment, as this process of release from glamour has been occultly called. And I just want to ask, is there unity without love? So, in my view, the energy of love in the non-sentimental sense is really revealing the unity and is very necessary in the ridding of the distortions, ridding ourselves of the distortions which usually prevent the appearance of reality. Okay, I would have you note that word unity, for it holds the secret of disillusionment. Now, normally we say, oh, I was so disillusioned, we complain about that, because we feel let down and all of our high hopes came crashing down and we were disillusioned. But if we are occultists in training, we're going to be happy about seeing the truth of a thing, even if it involves a temporary painfulness in the area of attachment and what should be detachment. So the next time you become disillusioned, maybe we can celebrate that moment. So it holds the secret of disillusionment. It's something we really want, don't we? We want to be free of those illusions, as this process of release from glamour has been occultly called. Now, remember, he's using glamour in the broad sense, not just specifically the emotional thing, but he said, I'm going to call all these things by the word glamour, including some of the mental things as well. So disillusionment applies. And we do need, we just don't know, do we? We are the victim of various glamours, Look at all these, on Ray. We go to page 120, 121 in the glamour book. We'll get there too. All these glamours, and it's just the beginning of things. And every one of them is hiding the truth or distorting the truth. Somehow the reality cannot get through. So somewhere from page 120 to 123, we have this list of glamours that we as persons are subject to, and we really ought to find out what applies to us. We ought to go down the list and check them off, And it will also be, I would say, a hint, strong hint, as to what may be our prevailing rays. And just because your soul ray may be of a certain nature, do not think that you cannot have glamours correlated with your soul ray. You absolutely can, because the personality appropriates that soul energy in the beginning and uses it in a personal sense. So it becomes part of the greater illusion in which we are all working. Okay, so it will be apparent to you, if you have studied these instructions with care, that the cause of glamour, now this is really important, the cause of glamour is based upon the sense of duality. Now think of that, the sense of unity, which is achieved in contemplation, which is correlated with the sign Libra and with the planet Venus. This helps the subject and the object to recognize itself as the same thing. And when I'm working with this and I'm at all successful, I always find that the heart center is involved. So that thing that brings us over the gap between the subject and the object, I think, is really the energy of the heart center that allows you to fuse the subject and the object and find a unity between them. Now, when there's a unity, the character of that which you are attempting to fuse remains. This is still this and that is still that, except that they are somehow deeply, deeply related and aspects of the same thing. When you get into oneness, it goes even deeper than unity, although sometimes words are used loosely, So it will be apparent to you, if you've studied these instructions with care, have we, that the cause of glamour is primarily based upon the sense of duality. And of course, since we are on this planet adjudicators between the pairs of opposites, let's say soul and personality, spirit and matter, we are always going to go through this sense of duality. Always. There's no escape from it, and we have to reconcile the dualities, and that is our great spiritual objective, and it's done through real contemplative meditation. Okay, if such a duality did not exist, there would be no glamour, and this perception of the dual nature of all manifestation lies at the very root of the trouble or troubles with which humanity is, in time and space, faced. So, I just say, wow, this is how it would be, eradicating all glamour if that sense of duality did not exist. But the sense of duality is a great mistake in perception. Now think about that for just a minute. You look around you and there's multiplicity and variety and all that, and still, as it says in the divine Pimander, it's the only one thing. The variations of the only one thing. Now we're all stuck in the variations. If we could get beyond the variations and back to the only one thing, while still be able to handle the variations, we would have an end to glamour. We would have an end to illusion. So keep this firmly in mind. If such a duality did not exist, there would be no glamour. And this perception of the dual nature of all manifestation lies at the very root of the trouble or troubles with which humanity is in time and space faced. But, we have to remember that the great God of the universe intentionally fragmented his self-perception. Now, what did I just say? The great God of the universe intentionally fragmented his own self-perception. And this is in order to lead to the variety and multiplicity of the universe, which leads to an ever new experience for the one who is experiencing itself concretely in time and space forever. Now, don't ask me to repeat what I just said, but, I hope you can get what I mean. When there was that channeling, a real thing by Dr. Anna Kingsford, sort of under the supervision of Blavatsky, something was coming through there, and they asked for the question about what is evil, or why is this universe, and the whole idea was that God had to be other than God in order to be God. Now think about that for a second. God had to appear to seem to be other than God in order really to be God. So the old saying in philosophy that if God cannot create the stone which he cannot lift, then he is not God. So, the great deity, extra universal deity, subjects itself to limitation in time and space to act out in the finite condition, the absolute infinity which it is. Now, these are the, maybe I don't know if I'm inviting you to the conference or if I'm scaring you away, but if you're there in person, I'm going to do my best to try to explain some of these things. So from the philosophical angle, we get a clearer idea of what we really are and stop making the mistakes of a mistaken identity. Of course, it's one thing to talk about it and it's another thing to do it. So anyway, that was a little, deviation there perhaps. Anyway, get over duality. This perception of duality is the very problem that lies at the root of all glamour. Now, that's something we really have to think about because we've got to pass through it. But at the same time, passing through it, we have to pass beyond it and return to monality, if you will, and still be able to handle illusionary duality, which is forced upon us in the Mahamaya of the universe. We have to reach monality and still be able to handle duality, which forever is forced upon the perceiver, the emanated perceiver in the Mahamaya of each universe. Okay, this perception passes through various stages and constitutes the great problem of the conscious entity. We have all these different dualities, you know. It can start out as etheric and physical, and then it can be astral and etheric physical, then it can be mental versus astral etheric physical, and then it can be personal versus the elemental energies, then it can be soul and personality, then it can be the triad versus the soul and all of its personal conditioning, and then finally it'll be spirit and matter, it'll be the monad and whatever else is left. But really, it goes on beyond that too. This perception passes through various stages and constitutes the great problem of the conscious entity, which at last we are. This condition is a difficulty in the realm of consciousness itself and is not really inherent in substance or matter. Now that's an interesting statement, isn't it? It's the question of, let's just say, this is the question of how consciousness progresses from the forced sense of duality into monality. I'm just going to call it that, you know. The dweller in the body, here it is, this is it. The dweller in the body perceives wrongly. See, think about that our very perceptions are rooted in a method which causes glamour and illusion because of our sort of cramped perception, isolative perception. We're just always making finite that which is infinite. We're always making smaller that which is bigger. It's just how we're built at first. And then we have to find our way out of it. The dweller in the body perceives wrongly. He interprets incorrectly that which he has perceived. He proceeds to identify himself with that which is not himself. He shifts his consciousness into a realm of phenomena which engulfs him, deludes him, and imprisons him until such time as he becomes restless and unhappy under the sense that something is wrong. Well, you know that when you're becoming restless and unhappy under these circumstances, spirit, the monad, is knocking at the door and said, look, I'm tired of being unliberated here by your faulty and cramped perceptions. Okay, you know, they say that at night you study what you're going to bring through during the day. And I must say, I haven't read this, or maybe read it in a long time, but you know, it's exactly what I've been bringing through to my own self in trying to explain this thing. This is the story. This is the story of glamour right here. This is it. Okay, so let's read it again. The dweller in the body perceives wrongly. He interprets incorrectly that which is perceived. He proceeds to identify himself with that which is not himself. You know, that object we call the body or the personality. It's not the real thing. He shifts his consciousness into a realm of phenomena. Buddha says, get rid of phenomena if you want to be free, into a realm of phenomena which engulfs him, deludes him. You know, you get the idea of the big wave coming over and the whale is swallowing Jonah, you know. And he's misguided, he's deluded, he's going astray, and imprisons him until such a time as he becomes restless and unhappy under the sense that something is wrong. The prodigal son awakens to himself and says, look, I'm just eating what pigs eat here. In my Father's house, even the servants, have better than I have here. Then he comes finally to the recognition that he is not what he seems to be, and that the phenomenal world of appearances is not identical with reality as he had hitherto supposed it to be. Now, I would suppose that we know a lot about this mentally, and the question is, when we perceive, do we actually know it experientially? That's the question. From that moment on, he comes to the sense of duality, to the recognition of otherness, and to the perception of this sense of dualism, that this perception of the sense of dualism should be ended, and that a process of unification and an attempt to achieve at one-ment should be undertaken. Boy, I tell you what, in finding this, I haven't even read it through just now earlier, and I'm wondering if I ever read it sometimes. It's just fantastic explanation of what goes wrong and how we find our way out of it, through it. From that moment, the troubles of the evolving man begin to be observed by him and consciously encountered. In other words, a little self-knowledge goes a long way, and he faces a long period of, quote, extrication, untangling, from glamour and the entering into that world wherein unity is known. All right, so I'm not going to get into the stages. We'll do that the next time. But this is potent stuff and needs to be reread. So do, if you have the book or you have the CD-ROM, go to this, think about your life, reread it. This takes us up to page, what page does it take it up to? We'll see in a second here. I'm hoping that I get a page number very soon here because I'm not doing too well at the moment. Well, okay, this says page 97, but I bet it's 96 or even 95.
It's 95.
Okay, thanks, Joe. Every once in a while, the voice of God really helps, We have actually, we're polytheistic here. We have a number of voices of gods, but they're all part of the same advisory deity existing on the right-hand side of the chart. Okay, thank you, Joe. So that's 95, and that's going to be all of our discussion for tonight. But so that I don't go astray, which so often I do, I'm going to, I think I'm just going to go here and, okay. Gosh, 3 pages. That's really extraordinary. We're really making progress. Okay. So I'm going to put this in here if you don't mind, or if you do mind. And this will be the end of doggy number 109, and it will be page 92 to 95, evening session, and the next one will be beginning of doggy 110. Oh, and will be academic reading number 50. All right, excuse me. Okay, yeah, that's pretty good. 255s make 110, right? All right. It's not 55, it's 50. And it'll be on the 29th of March, which is the day right after Mercury turns direct. So maybe we can hope for better things, clearer things. And is this a morning session, Joe, or when is it? Do you have that? It says evening session right here, so.
Yes, it's it's AM.
Morning session. Okay.
Morning.
Very good. Okay, and we start on page 95. All right, I have found this very interesting, actually, and somehow foundational when it comes to understanding the causes of glamour. So, one of the things we want to work on, in addition to, trying to loosen the hold of certain glamours over our psyche, over our consciousness, is how to achieve the ongoing perception of unity through real contemplation. Now, sometimes we say, I'll contemplate this, I'll contemplate that. What we mean is we'll think it over, and we'll think it over for a long time, and we'll think seriously. But contemplation is really another thing. And one of the best books I think that Alice Bailey wrote on her own was From Intellect to Intuition, where the different phases of meditation are gone over with great clarity. At least I found a lot of benefit from it, especially, in reading about contemplation and what it really is, and how the soul itself begins to contemplate, and how the thinker slips into the meditation of the soul in order to really contemplate, where unity is revealed. So, she's gotten some wonderful books there, and they explain different aspects of things. And I would really recommend for anybody who wants to get into a more exacting view of what the stages of meditation are to read From Intellect to Intuition, or to reread it. Let's put it like that. All right, friends. So here we are. And if you have thoughts, questions, things, that you've been making note of as we've been going along, then that is fine. You just raise your hand, or over here on the right-hand side, if BL or Joe, if you have, or Tuya, if you have something you want to say, then you can
Suzanne has a
just,
comment.
okay, Suzanne, and let's see what's, here we go. Or is that Vera? No, that's Suzanne. Okay, here we got it. Okay, thank you. Okay. To help children having peer issues when I was teaching, I used to say, I am me and you are you, having them sit in a peace talk table, okay, together, and change this to say, I am you and you are me. Okay, so that's really, you're planting the seeds of occultism right here, Suzanne. They were to discuss this together, then give me some reflection on being the other, even for a moment. So that's a very wonderful thing, very useful thing, and I can see that it would be useful for adults too. So this is exactly the sort of the foundation of what contemplation reveals, the unity between the subject and the object. So thanks for sharing that. That's good. And Vera, you go ahead. Maybe you want to speak. Go ahead.
Yeah. You today mentioned that the Washington is like a swamp. And I would say, yeah, it's not just Washington, it's the whole population.
Yeah.
And as we could watch recently, this documentary, Leaving the Neverland. So where the mothers were bringing their children to a pedophile.
Yeah.
And this is such a collective blindness.
Yeah.
I was watching, I think it was in this unedited version. So there are some, like symbolically about this person. He was black. He pretended to be white. He was very weak, yet pretending to be like a tough street kid, wearing sort of like black suit, uniform-like suits with red band over the arm, so reminding the Nazi uniforms. And there was a version, there was a shot in the documentary when he was looking at some sort of small screen, and there was Hitler's face there. And I thought, gee, this is really interesting. So that was it was just example of that glamour.
Yeah, well, I haven't yet taken the time to do that, but we do, it seems that we are not really respecting the soul of the other. We are victims of our desire body, often distorted and perverted, and we are preying upon others, and we are making excuses for it. And this is ubiquitous. This is going on in a lot of different places. And look, he said, before the Christ can return, not only a measure of peace, not only a measure of sharing, a real tendency towards sharing, but the governments and churches have to clean house. Well, we certainly are watching that now. We are watching all of this come up under Pluto, coming up into the light. And it's, it's very unpleasant and shocking, but necessary in order to make the corrections. I mean, every day there's not just a new priest, it's a new cardinal or a new bishop or someone in the hierarchy. And we can't say that the Catholic faith is alone in this. Obviously, it's going to be the other Christian groups as well. And we can't say that Christianity is alone in this, because there's going to be all kinds of perversions in other conditions as well. I even saw it in Buddhism recently, where you wouldn't really expect it. And of course, in the Islamic group, it's got to be there too. It has to be there everywhere. The house cleaning is going on. Very first step before we can establish that peace and the sharing. And when he says, really, the governments have to be tending towards really sharing, I thought, boy, have we got a long way to go, but maybe things can happen quickly overnight. You never know. So thank you for that, Vera. Appreciate that. Now, let's see if there's anything here, or on the other side, we can, if you wish to speak, you can also. Yeah, your thoughts, anybody? Your thoughts about what we have gone over today, the causes of glamour, the various troubles, the otherness of things, the mistaken identity factor. He is not what he seems to be. So I'm going to put that in. Whoop, that's no good. Okay, I'll just call this the mistaken identity problem. Identity problem. That's the big one, and we always think what you see is what you get, and just open your eyes and you see reality, but it's not reality at all. So the very first thing is we have to help people understand that sense of being ill at ease within themselves may be actually quite a good thing, because it may reveal that they're just not happy perceiving what is untrue and thinking somehow that they should think it is true. It's not. And that involves going beyond appearances. And that involves the very first step of the third level of the higher mental plane, spiritual discernment. Think of it. Spiritual discernment. You actually see behind the obvious in terms of what is the spirituality within the obvious. And for so many people, it's just a blank wall, There's no entry, there's no discerning. When we begin to discern what is real behind what is apparently real, then we have arrived to a degree. I mean, we're arriving, let's say. Other thoughts? Anybody? Karen? Okay, go ahead, Karen.
Yes. Early on, you said that the Ray 5 physical brain or physical body would be dangerous. Why is that? And then also the Tara test that you mentioned.
Is that dangerous too?
Well, yeah, actually, is it?
Yes, it gives you 888 questions and you'd drive yourself crazy by the end of the month. Well, it's only dangerous in that respect. But you maybe it's been lost forever. I don't know. We're trying to reclaim it. When Rick died, some things happened, but somehow I think we'll get that Tara test out of the land of the forgotten. And it's only a test for disciples, frankly, because people would be, driven quite mad by taking it, because it deals with the higher levels of the rays. And so people who are somewhat familiar with this would be the ones to work it through. As far as the fifth ray brain goes, he said, and how dangerous that would be for an occultist. because basically what that does is link a person with a very impenetrable, concrete mind. And that's the very area that the Black Lodge works to make a separate sphere. And DK said, and you know how dangerous that is, it's the cause of the ill-omened reputation of the number 13. Because if you look at sort of creating a group that works only from the concrete mental plane, in other words, here, let me show you what I mean, if I can. Oh, golly, let's see, where am I here? Yes, I think here's where I am. Okay, so this is F disk, D disk, and let me just see, AAB diagrams, okay. And I'll try to go right here. Let's see. I have too many things here, obviously. Tabulation. Okay, I'm just going to go in here and just say what the heck, and I'll find something, okay? Okay, come on now, come on. Oh, I think that's the wrong thing. I've pulled up the divine pleroma, and it doesn't show a single thing, does it? Okay, I'll find it in just a second. There it is. Okay, good. And right here. Okay, here it is. Now, what was I looking for? Oh, yes, I was looking for this. In other words, here are the 7 creative hierarchies, but the Black Lodge wants to isolate, to create yet another hierarchy in this area, which is totally an insulated concrete mind. Now, what's really interesting, we direct everything from the concrete mind, so it has a first ray will connected with it, and it's on the 5th plane. And the 1st and the 5th rays are precisely the rays used together, which the Black Lodge has perfected. They bring the concrete mind to a level, DK says, that just is beyond belief, and they use various methods to do that. So that when you look at that, these 7 plus the 1, and we go on to, let's see, do we go on to okay, well anyway, there's one above it somewhere, and I'm trying to find it. There it is. Okay. 1, 2, 3. Here it is. Plus these 5. So there's 8 below and 5 above, and that's what he says gives the ill-omened 13. What it would mean is there would be such concretion in the thought, such a slavery to form, that the true abstract spiritual realms would never be touched, and the whole love energy would be completely shut out by concretion. And that's why I think he found it to be very dangerous. It would make a person very hard. By the way, this same person, he said, if you continue like this, you will have your second ray soul, but you'll have a first ray personality, you'll have a third ray mind, you'll have the 6th ray astral body that you have now, and a 5th ray brain. 135, he says, those are the Prussian rays. He doesn't include ray 7. Those are the Prussian rays. And you know how dangerous it would be to have such a combination. So the person would be so concrete that they couldn't reach into the level of love and abstraction, and they would be trapped by that great material deva who basically has all of the Black Lodge trapped into the level of concretion, which is an unprincipled, dense physical body of our planetary logos. In other words, coming right down from 21 subplanes, they're trapped in the dense physical body, and they cannot pursue the path of true spirituality. So this man would be very separative, okay? And that's why he said it was a danger, in my view, okay?
And then what would the physical body be like?
Well, I've never been able to figure that out because I imagine, sometimes I think about the gnomes and the very hard into the earth types, and I think, well, maybe they would be somewhat gnome-like, something of that nature. But I just don't know because there's been no examples set before us. I imagine it would be very compact, I do believe, and that the hardness that is suggested by the combinations of ray 1, 3, and 5 would reflect itself in the physical body. So the physical body is affected by the personality ray. So that's a 1-5 situation. And put those things together, and DK says the psychopathology of the 1-5 together is that the man becomes untouchable. So separative that he's untouchable. And there are other psychopathologies of the 2-4-6 line and of the 3-7 line. So, probably we're not going to see that, okay? And DK was trying to warn the man away from his concretizing tendencies, where he was trying to make everything so concrete and so definite that it was becoming a danger. And he also says, I'm giving you a hint there. This man is very interesting. He was a chiropractor, okay? He thought he had a Ray 5 personality. DK says, no, that was the personality of your last life. Right now you have a Ray 5 mind. And then in the next life, he would have a Ray 5 brain, personality, mind, brain. DK says, I've given you a hint here. So obviously, this is something about how the rays work themselves downward toward physicality. It was a peculiar example, but he's the only one that showed that particular kind of tendency, and I'm just making out of it what I can,
And then just a comment about the reading when it said disillusionment, when we experience disillusionment, that and the pain of it, that it's a good thing because then if we recognize the pain of that is a good thing. And I'm thinking that was just a good thing for me to hear at this time because I think many of us experiencing so much disillusionment.
Yeah, well, the things we believed in and hoped for and all that, we see with real eyes, we see with real eyes. And we've been attached to the vision that we've had of things and of certain possibilities. And becoming detached when you're kind of stuck in attachment, that's a ripping process, and that is painful. But in the long run, you have to have it, It's a lot better to know the truth than to be living in a fool's paradise. As my old astrology teacher used to say, he said, everybody, they love this kind of astrology, blah, 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 but it's a fool's paradise, meaning nothing real would come out of it, but they would have a good time. Anyway, for a while.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Karen. Alrighty. Now, let's see. Okay, and Veronica. Okay. Now, let's see what we have here. And Chris, too, I see. Okay, you got mixed up when we say mind, do we mean the mental body or the physical? Well, when we say, you see, it's a fifth ray brain that this man would have had. So that means the sort of physical processes which bring the mind through would have been conditioned by the fifth ray. So we definitely mean, when we say mind, we mean the mental body. And when we say brain, even though the mind works through the brain, we mean some physical process. So the fifth ray would have been conditioning, whatever the occultist knows about the functioning of the brain, and there's so many occult things there. You can read Manly Palmer Hall and his book on alchemy and, Kabbalistic Rosicrucian, big encyclopedia. He's got a lot of articles from the old alchemists about what the brain itself does, the physical apparatus. So that would be the affected by the fifth ray, the brain processes themselves. And we don't know all of them by any means, okay? But the fifth concretizing ray would be affecting those processes. He says the reason we have so many useless things in the world, just carrying away, making things, is because of the fifth ray. It's a mixture of technology and invention and I don't know, just the love of technique, but it is just a surplus of things. It's very concretizing. So mind is different from brain. See, that's definitely the case. And the map. I'm just going to point to it for just a second. The map. And let's see what we got here. And this is, okay, I'm just opening up some of Tuyu's things here. And so the brain is down here on this level. It is gaseous, it is liquid, it is dense, and the mind is up here on a completely different level. When our body drops away, and we make the transition, the physicality is gone, but the mind is still there. Now, a lot of people that are deeply into the mind, and they think that thinking is about the highest thing you can do, forgetting about the intuition and the love and the will. They confuse the mind and the brain. And they think, well, there's no thinking unless you have a brain, so obviously you can't survive death. But occultism says, yeah, you can definitely feel and think after the physical apparatus drops away. So down here is the brain, and up here is the etheric brain, which in white magic he talks about. And up here, or I should say in there, I'm talking about a higher level of vibration. Here is the concrete mind, and here is the abstract mind. And the reason that that fifth ray brain is so dangerous is you can't get into the higher levels of the abstract mind where the soul is found. So I hope that clarifies a little bit, I hope so. Now, Chris, so many people on prescribed antidepressant medication. The soul is calling, but the veils are intensified with the drugs. Yeah, well, that's it, because, the bias in the medical field is not to allow in these inner phenomena, looking at them as a symptom of schizophrenia, or what they call it, that you have a divided psyche. Well, indeed you do. You have a divided psyche. There is what the senses report, and there is what the inner senses reveal, both on the astral plane and the mental plane. So the drugs are meant to keep you right down here in this lower world, rather than allow you to experience some of these higher impressions. Of course, many people, when experiencing the higher impressions, they don't know what to do. And they are, in danger, because it is so frightening to them. I remember I was with my colleague Marianne, and a lady came to see us, but she came to see us right out of the mental institution, and she was, let's just say, her astral mental contacts and visualizations were really out of control. She was completely engulfed and overcome by those impressions and entities from the lower parts of the inner planes that, there wasn't much we could do. We did our best. But situations like that may only be, unfortunately, remedied by death and a reorganization of the vehicles. And it does happen. So it's a dangerous thing. When Carl Jung went into the inner psychic world, as he did sometime before World War I, and basically he was having some kind of nervous breakdown, as they call it. At that time, he was like completely overwhelmed by visions of great slaughter and all the rest of it. He foresaw World War I, but nobody else foresaw it. Anyway, he had an anchor, an outer anchor on the physical plane, to make sure that he did not get swept away by the phenomena that he was encountering. So no wonder that doctors who know so little about all this want to slap the drugs on it so as to keep the person confined and out of touch with these inner possibilities, because not everybody can handle it, and people have gone quite mad and have not come back. So nobody said that occultism was not without its dangers. There are dangers here in what we're doing, and we just have to hold fast to the inner immortal God that we are, and keep our consciousness in the light, and keep that protective cross of divinity working, and then maybe we'll be able to withstand some of these phenomena, the lower levels of which are quite threatening. We have to overcome the fear somehow and get through all that. Yeah, well, we're on our way. Okay. Now let's see. Am I missing anybody now? Am I missing anybody? Okay, is there anybody over on the staff side that would like to speak or ask or comment or whatever? Okay. All right. Well, this has been quite a workout today, and we'll resume. I'm flying to the United States on the 26th, and I hope I'll be all in order by the time it comes time next Friday for this meeting. And if for any reason I'm not able, then I will inform Joe and BL, and we'll try to inform everybody that we may have a miss on that. And pretty soon, we do have the conference. The conference is all absorbing. If I suggest you go to 7ray, not a plural, 7ray.org, O-R-G, or .net, www.org or .net, and take a look at the website and what's coming up in the conference. And if you can't make it there in person, and I was just talking to you today, we were talking together, I said, yeah, it's great that we have the internet connection, because people who absolutely can't make it then can really participate in the conference. But there's something that happens in person at the conference which cannot be replaced, I would say, by the internet. I mean, the internet is great, and it's a wonderful possibility, but there's something about being etherically present with your brothers and sisters, and having the chance for side conversations and all kinds of inquiries and initiatives and all that, which basically you cannot achieve otherwise. So for however much of the conference you might actually be able to attend in person in Chandler, Arizona, I would strongly suggest that you make every effort to do so. We have a very strong academic side to things starting on the 30th of, it's meditative too, of course. It's starting on the 30th of April, and then 1 week later, and it's going to be on the 7th of May, the main conference begins, okay, and it'll last until the 12th. So from the 30th until the 7th is the pre-conference, and then on the same day, the main conference begins and it lasts till the 12th. It's all about this magnificent third ray, the acute energy of divine mental perception. What is the mind of God, really? What is it? And how do we gain access to it? Now, the Buddha did. Somehow he was one of those beings within the Earth scheme, but maybe from the earlier solar system as well, who gained access to the mind of God, and that's what his cosmic touch was all about, his sixth initiation. What are those very, very high mental states that as disciples we want to know about and participate in? This is pretty much the theme, forerunners of the light, That's what we should be, right? Illuminating and manifesting the divine plan. I know we all want to participate in that kind of thing, so I really encourage you to sign up, and sign up right away, because it's cheaper to do that. We have a pretty good room rate on the rooms that are available, and you can have 2, 3, 4 in a room. It can be quite economical, and it's a wonderful hotel, and it's 100 years old, I guess. And it's right on Old Town Chandler, which is very picturesque, colorful, and it's warm. If you're in a cold climate, I'm really looking forward to that. So we hope to see you there in person, if it's possible for you. Try to do what you can to get there. Okay, now let's see what else. What else? Okay. Are there any further comments that you would like to make, or any further questions before we get into our meditation? We're going to be dealing with the glamour of selfishness. We see it everywhere. Countries are going through very great tests, especially the second-rate countries on which we're going to depend quite a bit, the United States and the UK. Those gatherings of states and nations are going through big tests. And let's just say that I want to make a very general statement here, that selfishness is at war with unselfishness. I guess I can say that. And that's going to be one of the big tests coming up, because the people who possess, who have the privilege and the power and all that, they won't want to give it up, even if it means that eventually everybody would have that, including themselves. So there's, big problems, the same things that made the Roman emperors what they were in a slightly lesser form is affecting many people today who are in power. And then you always see when the selfless types come through, they may be radical, they may be offensive, whatever they are, but they are thinking about the other person and not just about themselves, because their state of mistaken identity is far less serious than those who are really affected by the glamour of selfishness. All right. Okay, now we're going to get into we're going to get now into our meditation. Right. And somewhere it is, this meditation. Yes. All right, here it is. Okay, so what we'll do then is have some opening silence. And the names are before us, of course, but what's important is that as a group here of some 42 people, fortitude, we are gathering into a unity. So that subtle sense of being together, regardless of apparent time-space separations, is with us, and we're as if in the same arena of consciousness. And we're going to be turning our thought towards the astral plane of desire and feeling, hopes, wishes, magnetic longing for or repulsion against. We're turning our attention there, but we need the protection of stabilizing ourselves in the light, and so we will use the cross of divinity in our protective formula. You can use the three, 3 fingers, 2 fingers and the thumb. I learned in the later days that it's the sign of the Trinity. Okay. As a soul, I work in light, and darkness cannot touch me. I take my stand within the light. I work, and from that point, I never move. So there's that lighted cross, in a way connecting ajna and heart and the 2 eyes. There are chakras before the eyes, too. And before the entire group is this cross as well. Now the 3 lights we bring together, raising up the light of matter, etheric physical, to the level of mind, and that mental light allows us to think rationally, logically, clearly, reinforced by the light of matter. And we call in also the light of the soul. We locate that feeling of the light of the soul. It's something else than that which dwells within the personality, and we bring it down, fusing it imaginatively with the other 2 lights, light of the soul, the light of unity, the sun of mind, with the light through which clear thinking occurs, with the light of vitality from below. 3 are one. Three are one. And then we say together, regarding this fusion of the lights, The light is one, and in that light shall we see light. This is the light that turns the darkness into day. And we will release our searchlight, the individual searchlights all blending into the big group searchlight, imaginatively extending onto the astral plane where it's going to find the glamours and dissipate the glamours. Light dissipating and destroying the veils, the clouds, the miasmas, the shrouds over reality, and melting them away, as it were, just like the sun, you've seen it, comes out in the morning and dissipates the fogs. It's quite fascinating how that happens. And so we get into that projection of the beam out into the swirling gray darkness, the hissing gray darkness of the astral plane, as DK describes it. And we say, radiance are we and power. We stand forever with our hands stretched out, linking the heavens and the earth, the inner world of meaning and the subtle world of glamour. We reach into the light and bring it down to meet the need. We reach into the silent place and bring from thence the gift of understanding. Thus with the light we work and turn the darkness into day. This is scorpionic work in a way. The sign most associated with the dissipation of glamour, Scorpio in relation to Taurus. Scorpio, illumination and intuition, and the sign of humanity, the sign of darkness, whose type of light is the light of day. And now, to strengthen our beam, we invoke the spiritual will. And it's a good time to do so with Aries having so much of that energy of will. invoke the spiritual will, and we say, with power upon its beam, the light is focused on the goal. We see our beam of light empowered with spiritual will, strengthened with spiritual will. A strong light to dissipate and even destroy the glamours that we will think about and envision. But first, we think of the glamour of selfishness. What is the cause? What harm has this glamour done to humanity, to you in your life, to those around you? The glamour of selfishness. When will it be that the welfare of others is more important than our own? Maybe when love and unity prevail, that will be the case. So now we consider the words of power. The power of our united light prevents the appearance of the glamour of selfishness. The power of our united light negates the quality of the glamour of selfishness from affecting humanity. The power of our united light destroys the life behind this glamour of selfishness. Now, in your own way and with intensity of purpose, you visualize your beam, the group beam, penetrating, weakening, dissipating this glamour of selfishness wherever you find it, and the clarity of the sun of selflessness will shine. So 5 minutes of work dissipating this glamour of selfishness. And we can continue to work on that glamour individually, because it really isn't even partially defeated until the second initiation. And it's certainly not defeated in our world of interrelationships at the present time. So always when the clouds, miasmas, and veils fall down, are dispersed, are dissipated, a sun shines. And that sun radiates the exact opposite quality, because the clouds and veils have been cleared away, so the sun of selflessness shines throughout the globe and in human consciousness. So we withdraw the group beam and our own beam back onto the mental plane, where three lights are one. We sound the Om 3 times, imagining that work has been done in the general field of glamour, as DK said. It includes illusion, glamour, and Maya. Specifically, we sound the Om 3 times, imagining that some degree of clearing has occurred. And this will mean that separation has been overcome on the mental plane, distortion overcome on the astral plane, and chaos overcome on the etheric plane. Friends, thank you for your work tonight during the day. We'll be back tomorrow at 6 p.m. GMT, and the work will be with the soul of nations, and then on Sunday with the attracting of financial resources for the work of the hierarchy. I appreciate your presence very much. And so, Olivia, Tuya, and I wish you well, and let us persist under this fantastic surge of Aries energy. I come forth, and from the plane of mind I rule. I, the monad, come forth into the higher mental plane and form the jewel in the lotus, and from thence I rule all that takes place below that point. Many blessings, lots of love, and we'll see you before long. These will be posted, and if you miss a meditation, you can go and re-experience it, and the readings that are pertinent, which is probably a good idea if you miss. And we'll just persist is what we will do. Okay, many blessings, and we'll see you a little bit later. Bye-bye.